Our role isn't just to make something artistic, is to make something that people care about and that's entertaining and that is fun to play and fun to watch. And there's a complicated relationship between a marching band and arrangers and people like Iain that are running the band and writing and the athletic department. And it's extremely important to learn how to work with large scale operations like athletics.
Hey everybody, it's Tim Hinton, the Beast of the Marching Arts, and we are talking about starting a marching band program from scratch, an unbelievable monumental task, and in this case, at Widener University, at a university level. With me today, Iain Moyer's here. Iain, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So this is a really interesting topic. We're going to talk to a bunch of different folks that are in different roles that made this happen. So tell me about this.
Sure. So I teach at Widener University, which is in Chester, Pennsylvania, which is in the suburbs of Philadelphia. It's about probably 15 minutes from the center of Philadelphia. And, you know, I started teaching here at Widener 10 years ago in 2014. And I started out as a pep band director to kind of bring the pep band program back, performing at football games and basketball games. But shortly thereafter, arriving on campus, you know, the intent was really to, you know, field a marching band. So back in fall 2018, we fielded our first marching band at Widener University, and we've had 5 successful fall seasons, not obviously including fall 2020 when we did virtual activities, but we just finished our 5th marching band season this past fall. So it was definitely a unique task to start a marching band, one that was made perhaps even more unique because Widener doesn't have any music majors on our campus. We don't have an academic major in music, performance, music education, and so on. So we're really starting this with, you know, a group of people that, you know, they're not majoring in music. So we've got lots of engineers, lots of nurses on our campus, lots of College of Arts and Science, business, and so on. But no one's majoring in music. So it was a unique challenge to kind of get the ball rolling down the hill to make that happen.
Yeah, I love working with and writing for college bands, and there is definitely a different feel when you don't have that sort of core set of music majors. I think it can sort of be really cool, but as far as starting something, you don't have that set of people standing there ready to go that have to do it. So I can see how that's a different kind of task.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, you know, I think the beauty about college marching band, there's no rules. You know what I mean? Everybody has, you know, and there's rules to high school marching band when you're in competition and things like that. But college marching band, you can really build it however you want to build it. And each college marching band has their own unique identity. And I think we're in the process of forming our brand of marching band at Widener. And yeah, I think that's a really unique part of the college band experience. There's no competitions in college, so it has a really different feel to it.
Yeah, I love that it's sort of like you can do whatever you want. You can decide the brand and the style and what you want to do. And what we're going to be doing, everybody, is we're going to be talking to the people that were responsible for creating the music and then the visual and even the uniforms and what that all looks like. So we're going to talk to a variety of different people that were involved in this process, very smart professionals, and how it all came together.
I think the unique thing was as we kind of journeyed towards fall 2018, it was kind of a 2-year process to kind of figure out, okay, you know, it's a unique perspective when your university doesn't own a drum major podium. They don't own uniforms. They don't own, you know, there's a lot to kind of, you know, on board as far as, you know, items, but also people and so on. So yeah, it's been a really fun journey, and I've had a lot of people who have been a big part of our team, and you get to hear from some of those people, some of the folks who work on the music side of it and help design there, some of the folks who do our visual program as well, and then also our uniform provider, G2 Performances. We have a representative who's going to be joining us from there to, you know, because that's one thing, you know, it's one thing if you're a pep band, you can go buy Widener University apparel to wear, you know, basketball games, but, you know, you can't wear that on a football field. So you have to create a uniform from whole cloth and so on. And then lastly, we're going to have our university president on to talk about, you know, where we're going and where we've been.
Well, I'm really looking forward to all these conversations. I have to tell you, I feel like sometimes when I'm as an arranger, if I have restrictions, certain problems the band has or instrumentation issues, it can really be helpful. It can sort of guide me and narrow my choices and help me figure out where to go. So the thing that you're describing seems almost kind of insurmountable because anything goes. I mean, you could do any kind of style of show, of music, of marching, of look. So how did you guys begin to figure out what you wanted to be and what the style and brand of the band might be?
Well, I think we brought on particularly our two music arrangers, Colin McNutt and Keith Karlson, and we were able to, talk. And I think the unique thing about both of them is they have a really big background in college marching band. They do high school band and things like that, but they have a really big background in college marching band. So I think, we immediately decided, okay, we want to make our shows more popular music based than maybe classical music based. So that's sort of the genre that we've stuck in, for these five seasons and so on. So it's been a unique opportunity to kind of, just really start the music brand from a pop music standpoint, and really be able to write tunes that our football audience will also like, but also when we go out and perform in exhibition at high school marching band competitions that they'll enjoy as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, I'm looking forward to talking to Keith and Colin, and I love Iain. I have to say, I love that as a music educator, you said we always started with the music, obviously, so I love
Right.
that it wasn't like, well, we want to wear yellow, like it was,
Sure.
I see a spandex, whatever, I'm glad you didn't start there. You started with the music. That's totally appropriate in my opinion. So I look forward to starting with the conversation with Keith and Colin. Thanks, Iain, for putting this all together. I'm really looking forward to these conversations.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Widener's an interesting place because before I got there, there was a very small music program, and ironically, actually, back in the 70s and 80s, it was very, very successful music program, particularly from a jazz ensemble standpoint. There's a gentleman named John Venor who was running the jazz program then, and so on. But when I came to campus, we were looking to kind of revitalize, particularly like the athletic band program. And so my first 4 years on campus, we had pep bands and so on that performed at basketball and football games. But we quickly realized that we wanted to have a marching band at Widener. And to be honest with you, for Tim, these were the two people I first called when we knew we wanted to have a marching band. I think Colin was the person I brought on board immediately. And then Keith immediately after that. But I think it was an interesting proposition to start a marching band at Widener from kind of whole cloth. But most importantly, to try to get people involved that I knew could be really successful and help with the process. And I think for myself and Colin and Keith, we both come from the UMass School of Marching Band, if you will. We both went to school together. All three of us went to school together at the University of Massachusetts, and kind of came up together and so on. But I think the unique thing about Colin and Keith is they have a really big background in college marching band. They both write for some high schools, obviously throughout the country, but they have a unique background specifically in college marching band. And I think that's a unique thing. I think as we were talking about earlier, Tim, it's a different beast to try to write for a college band as opposed to a high school band, because there's no rules necessary for a college band because there are no competitions and so on. So, but yeah, I think Colin's role has been kind of as music advisor, and then obviously writing percussion music for us and so on. And then Keith's role has been really sculpting the wind music and taking on that role for sure.
So Colin, you have this project where this band can really be anything, right? I mean, Iain and I have talked about the fact there's no rules for college band, really. You could play any kind of music you want to. You can have any kind of style. So how did you guys decide where to begin?
Well, it's an interesting thing talking about college marching bands, because I always say when people ask me about arranging and maybe how I got started as a writer or an arranger, I give almost all the credit to UMass and being involved in that program for a long time, because as you're pointing out, there's no rules to college marching band in the sense of style. And I think back to the years and years of decades of music that we've played at UMass, and the styles continue to evolve, and we can dip to the past, we can go to the future. You can really do anything that is inclusive and getting people activated with a large cast of people. The college bands, it's not rooted in competition, so it's rooted in participation and performance. And I think that I really love that about the activity. And with Widener, I think it gave a lot of flexibility to start something from scratch. And Iain, I remember our first conversations it was more about what's the brand? What do we want to say with this group? And how do we want to create a place and a space for students to come in and feel like they can participate at a high level, even though some of them may be in a more beginning level for some of them, at least in the marching arts. Even though many of them are playing music and playing instruments, to start a marching band from scratch, I think it was more about what kind of music would they be interested in, what kind of presentation would they be excited about, and then how do we kind of execute that?
Yeah, so Keith, I mean, this is a really interesting project for you guys because I know you don't have music majors at Widener, so you have this wide variety of skill levels, and you're trying to figure out what's going to engage this college audience and what's going to engage these students.
Yeah, man, these other two are so well spoken. Let's hope I can hang on this level. Yeah, no, I think it does go back to UMass a lot. When we first started there, again, at the college level, there are non-music majors, there's music majors, there's all these different levels of players. And so from the beginning, I think I've always had in my brain, how do you make things accessible to both groups of people and still have it be fun? Yeah, and I think Iain and Colin have done a great job of programming the music to keep it fun, but also challenging. And I do think one cool thing is that Iain and Colin work with some of the best high schools and also drum corps that are out there. And what I think is really cool about that is that they brought a level of some of that into this this college band arena. So adding electronics in the pit and sort of adding some dance movements into the band. I think it's been a really cool place for people to play some music, right, that they can achieve. But also, I think what these guys are bringing to it is also really cool because they're bringing elements of stuff that's at a very much higher level and still making it applicable to everybody there. So yeah, it's been a really cool process to see. Again, it's so great. This started from nothing, and then there's hundreds of people in the band, and I think it's an amazing achievement that sort of Iain has made happen over the last few years.
How big is the band, Iain, now, the exact numbers?
We're right around 100. I think next fall, we'll probably be above 100, but this past fall, we were around 98 members. So we started back in 2018 with 45, I think, members and so on, and kind of been growing. I think we did a good job during COVID of not losing people and bringing people to campus and to the band program, into the band program virtually, and then on campus in person. So yeah, we're right around 100 people, and we're hoping to continue to grow that. So we started much smaller than we were currently, but continuing to grow for sure.
I think one thing too that's really interesting about this project, and we could talk about the musical side, we could talk about the arranging and that kind of thing, but to me it was much more about a recruiting proposition, like trying to get kids. I know for Iain, he needed to get kids on campus. How do you get more kids on campus to look at the music program perhaps, or to just participate musically on campus? So that's like two different things. You could be, right, because you can study music, right, Iain? You have students getting degrees, but you also have people experiencing music that have other vocations and other disciplines. And that was always the magic of the college band experience to me, is that it's a place for everybody. If you have a really serious musician, that there's a place for that person. We can write that person apart to be featured, whether it's a vocalist or a trumpet solo or a great percussionist. You can find a way through the arranging to make sure that person is challenged, and then have it be a level where everybody can get involved. But Iain, and I think it's also interesting that your job description when you were hired, I believe, was also recruiting, right? You had to do a certain amount of recruiting for the music department. So the marching band, as we all know, is a great dragnet to drag people into music. And it certainly was for me. I always tell that same story of how I started in music was basically the luck of a marching band, that the ability to be able to be trained at school where my parents, were not, responsible for paying for lessons, and there wasn't a piano in my house. I just didn't grow up with music that way in my house. Nowadays with kids, and I have young kids, so we have them in 1,000 different activities. But back when I was a kid, I think that you really relied on the school programs, whether they were good, bad, or indifferent. If you had an educator that could inspire you, that was where you were getting educated musically, as opposed to kind of the way it is now where everything's so specialized. And kids are doing so many specialized things with lessons and other things. So I thought that the college band at Widener could serve that role also. And it seems to be working really well. How big was the band? I don't remember, Ian. How big was the band when we started?
When I first came to Widener in 2014, the pep band was around 20 members, and then when we started the marching band in fall 2018, we were somewhere in the 40s, mid 40s, and so on. So it's continued to grow, and I think people, as we've gotten our name out there, and it's helped getting off campus performing at places like the Collegiate Marching Band Festival, which is a really awesome event in Allentown every year, and then getting obviously performing at high school band competitions and exhibition. It's been a lot of fun to kind of, people are finding us now, and as opposed to always finding them and so on. So I think getting the name and the brand out there, and I think that's been a big part of it, getting something that the students enjoy playing, but also, the future students would enjoy, being excited about listening to, and obviously, parents and so on at our football games as well. So I think one of the unique challenges at Widener has always been like defining, okay, what can we do, but also what shouldn't we do, or what can't we do? And I think that's been a big part of Colin and Keith's help with, I think for us, like one of the things from a musical standpoint is like trying to be smart about how much music we do. And I think from a visual standpoint, how many, pages of drill we're doing. But I think we've tried to, over the years, I think we started, from a musical standpoint, our productions were rather short, and, they've gotten longer over the years and so on. But just trying to figure out to be successful and to put a brand out there that is something that people want to be a part of, trying to create something musically that is of the appropriate length. And that's a big part of what Colin has helped me with, and then what obviously Keith does a lot of when he's writing the wind music, for sure.
So give me an example of something you decided you should do.
Well, I think for us, one thing kind of coming, one of the things that we initially didn't do was actually do a pregame, we do a pregame, routine and so on. And kind of coming out of 2020 into when we fielded the marching band back in fall 2021, I think one thing is, okay, we have to do a pregame. We're going to get everybody together. And I remember getting both of Colin and Keith on a call and say, okay, hey, what are we going to do? How are we going to create some excitement? And I think that was an initial, success as far as just trying to create something musically that works, and that people people are excited about. So we picked a couple popular tunes. We figured out how to kind of create them in a mashup, that we could kind of do a 1-minute routine before the football team runs out on the field. So I think that was something that we decided, okay, we got to do this. This is something that's important to the program for sure.
But the pregame is something where you can squeeze in, something like Katy Perry. I think we did Roar. Yep. And that piece it's a lot of fun. It's good pop music, and there's an excellence to doing that. We always talk about artists like Elton John. That it's music that you might not do in a BOA band, other than like a quote or a ballad. You might play on it, but you can actually play the tune. You can play the chorus, the bridge. You can play the verses, and it's a lot of fun to be able to do that. And I think also the accessibility for the audience, right? Our role isn't just to make something artistic, is to make something that people care about and that's entertaining and that is fun to play and fun to watch. And there's a complicated relationship between a marching band and arrangers and people like Ian that are running the band and writing, and the athletic department. And it's extremely important to learn how to work with large scale operations like athletics. Whether you're a high school program that has a BOA future, like a lot of our our band gigs that we're writing right now, these are high-end, BOA bands that are very competitive, but they have to find a way to make Friday Night Football fun and make it work with athletics, because I think that having that synergy is really difficult and challenging. So the pregame for Widener was a really great way to help the athletic portion of your job, right? And create energy and give the members something fun to do, and also create some traditions for them. So that's another thing that's able to do. It's sort of like the preamble to your show, and we can rely on that, and we can interchange different things to it. But the basic part of it is sort of that overture to really any venue that you have to play in, which most of the time is a football game or things like in the athletic department, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, and I
exactly.
think I was going to say, from what we're trying to do, I think accessibility is a great point, especially for the kids. I think it's important. We keep trying to make sure we do contemporary things, because as crazy as this sounds, there's probably people who go to college now who've never heard of Whitney Houston. I mean, maybe not the right example, but like, or Elton John, or some of these things, the music that I grew up loving. I think it's great to bring some of these things in the world, but you still have to make this stuff accessible to the kids who are the age that they are today. So, trying to do maybe a Miley Cyrus song or something that's a little bit more contemporary, I think really keeps people involved. This keeps the students involved. And so, we're hoping to keep their parents, the students, all the different ages involved, by picking the music that we've done. So I think, yeah, the choice of music and not just sticking to old standards that we love has been a really fun part of it. And I think maybe a part that has helped to make it a bit successful.
Things like TikTok have made, some of the older music because we're older, and I think about the music that I was listening to when I was their age. I mean, that's like saying, hey, we're listening to like the Everly Brothers, or like, when I was a kid, it was like going to the 50s or 60s. And it's amazing though. I want to give major props to the youngest generation, because with things like TikTok, they get exposed to lots of older music. And like my 10-year-old knows all these tunes because she hears it online and little excerpts and things. And I think that there is like the band Chicago, like people know what that is, the younger generation, because they see it online, they hear it quoted in different formats that are more modern, and it's great music, like this is music that will travel the test of time because it's well crafted. So it's neat to be able to do new things, as Keith is suggesting, and then also pull some old things out and show the different side of where pop music came from.
I
Prince
think
comes to
too.
mind. That was one that was really successful. We did some Prince tunes, and I was just surprised how the kids, like, they knew it all. And they knew it all, and then they had their own interpretation of that, which is so cool.
No, I agree, Colin. It's interesting. Next year's show is sort of like a compilation of some more retro type. Like Earth, Wind and Fire, September. I Want to Dance with Somebody, Whitney Houston, but also Miley Cyrus's Flowers. And we did like a show reveal thing a couple weeks ago with the marching band students at Widener, and I think they were as excited to play like September by Earth, Wind and Fire as they were to play like Flowers by Miley Cyrus. So I think great music is great music, and I think that's something we trying to find things in the pop idiom that are really great music. I think Keith is a unique example because he's a professional musician, keyboard player, bass guitar player. I think he has a good frame of reference, having played in weddings, played on gigs. So like, okay, what do people really like to listen to? So I think Keith has always been a really good sounding board for those types of things.
Well, we do a lot of projects with Keith, and we go way back. We all went to music school together, and we played in different groups together. We were influenced by jazz and different things that we were playing. But Keith is one of these guys that I'm going to talk about you like you're not here. He's one of these guys that really was his best instrument, probably his most skilled instrument, was piano. But he played tuba in the cadets, contrabass in the cadets, and he was a tuba major at UMass. Yet he was playing snare drum in the drum line at UMass, which is not easy. I mean, that's like a great college drum line. Mostly drum corps level snare drummers. We're going back some time, but being a multi-instrumentalist and having all that kind of knowledge is really been cool because we lean on Keith a lot when we're doing even projects with Boston. He got involved with really voicing out one of our percussion features and helping because of his jazz knowledge and harmonic knowledge on piano and his ability to listen to something really complex and be able to help orchestrate some of these ideas for us. So we dabble a lot. We're all good. The three of us are very good friends as well. So we're always kind of connecting in different levels. But it's always neat to hear Keith's perspective because he really plays all these instruments and has a different perspective than most people that arrange.
Well, thank you. Iain, do you have anything you'd like to say nice about me as well? Or
Yeah. Again, I think Keith is unique individual because he has so many experiences that he can kind of bring to college marching band. And Keith almost exclusively writes only for college marching band, which is interesting. Writes for UMass, writes for University of New Haven, writes for Widener, and so on. So he definitely he doesn't dabble in this. He's committed to kind of to making this genre work. But Keith, can you talk maybe just a little bit about like what you think about when you're arranging for Win, specifically from a college standpoint?
Sure. Yeah. I think most importantly, there's two sides. There's the effectiveness of it, which I think Colin and Iain are great at. Like what are the parts of the music that should be exciting, and making sure that you program into the music very exciting parts, both for the audience to listen to and then the kids to play, and then just making sure that everybody, like Colin said earlier, like there's so many different levels of people, and you want to make sure that everybody feels involved. So making sure that the music reflects the level of each individual player, because I don't even know what book it is. It's probably some Malcolm Gladwell book, but there's some amount of uh, difficulty that you might try to achieve that is like optimal difficulty, right? It's like not so hard that it's frustrating, and it's not so easy that it's boring. So finding the sweet spot of challenging people so that they remain involved and they are excited to play it, and they can also achieve it with a little bit of work. I think that's like the biggest thing to focus on. And yeah, just trying to keep everybody involved on a performance level, I think is really, it makes people want to come back. I really think that.
Yeah, I love that you guys are talking about there is good quality music in this pop genre we're talking about that's very accessible to audiences. So you're sort of, going through and figuring out what that is. But Keith, arranging pop music is hard. It's just difficult, like the rhythms and they don't sing it the way, you have to play it the way they sing it or try to do that. So how do you deal with that part of trying to make it sound like marching band, but also sound like people expect it to sound?
Yeah, that's probably the most challenging part, is to make a vocal melody sound cool on an instrument. Because,
Yes.
despite what everybody might think, like, these singers, whether or not you like their music, are the best singers in the world. You can hate Justin Bieber, but if he sat next to you in a room and sang a song, it would blow your mind. So they're very, very talented. So yeah, I think it's just trying to find the essence of the melody. What's really nice, if we're going to get in on a technical level, is like um, uh, if you want to write something memorable, like you have to hear it and then remember it, right? Remembering it when you hear it makes something memorable and activates your memory. So a lot of these things, especially current pop music, is pretty repetitive, and they repeat a lot of parts so that you can remember it by the time you get to the end of the song. But also they're like sort of things that people can sing along to a little bit. So, at the basis, I think, of all of these songs, uh, there's a lot of accessible melodies that anybody could sing, even if you can't sing the entire song. So I think it's trying to find the essence of what the melody is, and then giving it to the instrument. And a lot of times if you get pretty close, people are going to know the song. But yeah, it's the most fascinating part about the job, I think, is how to translate vocals to instruments and have it not sound dumb.
Well, there's a reason why indoor percussion use vocal samples. There's a reason why I beg anybody that'll listen to me to find the most talented singer in your school system to sing along. And a lot of times at UMass, what we'll do with these types of tunes is we'll have, the winds will play the part of the verse, and then a singer will be featured on part of the verse. So, we can kind of go back and forth a little bit. But to play, I think it's a very interesting point. To play popular music without vocals is very challenging. And sometimes it's extremely easy to write it poorly and to sound like a march, or just sound like stylistically inappropriate. So I think that that's why things like Earth, Wind, and Fire are great, because it's written for brass instruments. There's a certain amount of that you can really emulate. If you have a rhythm section, a bass guitar, and a synthesizer, you can, and a brass section, you can get real close to that style of music without the vocals. But right, Ian, we always talk about this. I always like asking, can we get a vocalist? Because it does make it fun to have that voice in that style of music. But
yeah, I think that's a really big part. The rhythm section part of it, component. The front ensemble obviously is going to bring what they bring from a keyboard standpoint and so on. But I think the rhythm section component is a really big part of having a guitar player, a bass player, a synthesizer player. That goes a long way in making these tunes, rock, and really sell for sure. And I think the other thing too, I think one thing that Colin is really, really good at is writing for wins. And, I think I would say, marching band is a team sport. You've got wind players, you've got percussionists, you've got color guard, you've got visual ensemble, and so on. You might have a twirler, you might have a dance team, and so on. But I think, writing for percussion, like indoor percussion, has its own challenges for sure. But I think writing percussively for a marching band and for a drum corps, for that matter, I think is a really unique thing, because you have to really take the winds into account. I think that's something Colin really does well. And I think for Widener, the drum line is the drum set player, basically, and they're an extension of kind of that rhythm section and so on. But I think that's one thing Colin does really, really well at. But Colin, could you maybe talk about your approach just a little bit, as far as just obviously writing for a drum line in that kind of setting?
Well, I mean, it's simple. I try to do a good job at that over the years, because I would get fired. That's how it was when you were learning to write. And this is, I'm dating myself back a little bit. This is before WGI even existed. It was when I started writing, I guess you'd call it professionally, but it was, sometimes I was writing for free. Certainly for much of the first 5 years of my writing, when I aged out of drum corps, this is 1992, I aged out. So I was teaching drum corps. There was not the avenues there are today to make a living at it. You had to be absolutely insane. And there's a few of us old timers that are still rocking, and it's like, you were nuts. You take any gig you could get. I was lucky to have Tom Hannum, who was very experienced at that time. He was at the top of the Mount Rushmore, along with a few others during that late 80s, early 90s. And Tom was great, because he was an expert at writing melodically for a drumline. People weren't writing like that in the 80s. And, he took that with Garfield Cadets and was writing, the drum line was playing melodies. And that really changed the way that you thought about a drum line, as opposed to maybe more of a rudimental style. And that expressive quality of that kind of writing is gold. It's platinum gold for like a marching band and for a wind director. Like, imagine the head director who's writing the checks that's keeping me alive, right, with these gigs back in the day. They would love it, because I would make the group sound better. It would blend with the melody. It would be understated but felt. And there's a way, and then I think the stylistic integrity, that component, is really important. I think a lot of times with young writers, and I was certainly this way, missing the point of the style of the music is very easy to do with a drum line and with a front ensemble. If you're influenced, especially with the modern, innovations in WGI, where there's lots of freedom to write kind of your own voice. But when you're writing to a wind section, the voice is the winds. And coloring that and learning how to support that. I certainly had to learn that the hard way. And because you would lose jobs if you didn't create. I guess I always think of it in three things: the first job of the percussion section, pit and battery, would be the tempo. The second thing would be the blend and balance. So making sure that what you write fits the balance of the ensemble. If the woodwinds are playing, doesn't mean you have to rest every time. Just resting doesn't make it clear. You can be clear, but with a different implement, playing very soft and lighter. So, tempo, blend and balance, and then the third thing would be the stylistic component, really nailing the style of what the music is that you're emulating. If it's rite of spring, it needs to be bombastic at times. If it's swing, then the rhythms need to swing, and you need to write it appropriately. So anyway, those three things I think apply to any gig writing, and especially with the people that I'm being funny about it, but the people that kind of write the checks, the people that I work for, that I have to deliver for, are usually wind directors. And those are the people that I think you learn the most musically as a writer, writing to winds, because it teaches you a lot. Most things I learned about musically came, I guess, from school, but most of it came from writing for these groups, especially the college bands and then the high schools. And then of course you put it on steroids or whatever when you go into DCI, and I think WGI is another kind of nuclear version of this, because you sort of can be a little more creative. There are no winds, so you can emulate all the parts of the music. But when you can only emulate a counter voice or an ostinato, you have to stay clear of that melody. That's challenging to write that way. And like in the case, getting back to Widener, with Widener, the feel is going to be like heavy 2 and 4 sometimes. Like say, like when you listen to pop music on a radio, do you ever notice on the radio or whatever platform you're listening to music on, there's no dynamics in pop music. If you listen to a Rihanna tune, there's no dynamics in the piece. It's all kind of just one level. Now there's orchestration that create variety and color, but there's not like a subito mezzo piano crescendo like you would have in a wind ensemble piece. So you have to create some of those things in the arrangement, right, Keith? Like that's something that you have to create that when you're writing, and then I have to create it and still not lose the dance feel if that's the whatever you're doing. Like I'm thinking that Prince tune. We played this tune, was it last year? Let's Go Crazy. That piece is like high energy. But if you don't inject some dynamic phrasing into it, it will be quite monotonous. So it is like a tough balance. But those are the things, at least, that I think about writing with winds, and it's a challenging thing. I really love it because it's a puzzle. It's always a different puzzle depending on the group. I think that the thing about the craft of writing, teaching, and I think anything that you do, you're quoting that 10,000 hours idea. I mean, and Tim, you're certainly in this camp. I mean, we put in, 200,000 hours. I don't even know what the hours that we put in. That's why the marching arts, I'll speak on that, because that's my level, that's my place, my space that I'm comfortable in. I think that we have a crazy passion. It's something that I think back to starting out, as I was describing, from a marching band that had one poor director, running this whole program by himself. And luckily that program was in existence. And then at the time that I was doing music, I was doing it in high school a little bit, and I was a drum set player. And then I was able to join a drum corps. The Boston Crusaders, ironically, is where I started marching. But it was a very small local group at that time. It was volunteer staff. This is in the 80s and early 90s. There was, 40 horns, not 80 horns. There was local. Everybody was local. You took a bus in or you got a ride in, and we were in high school, a lot of us. That's different than the way that the high-powered drum corps are now. But I think with the point of it, like Widener, in these programs, it's a passion because it gives people a start. It gives them that outlet. And how cool is that? Like if you're getting like a law degree, right? Is there like a big law school like at Widener, right, Iain?
There is, yeah.
So like imagine you're in that kind of stressful environment, and then you have this outlet where you can work on team building. I mean, it's not just music, right? You're in a large cast of people. Marching band is kind of community, right? And it gave me that place of belonging, and it gave me really my start in music. So I think that's why we're all so passionate about it. I think your whole thing, Tim, is amazing because your content is really a passion project. That's what you're doing. I mean, I don't think that you're getting rich running your podcasts. I think you do it because you're incredibly committed to the passion behind it, and how cool is that? So it's and I appreciate, like, we're all giving each other compliments and everything, but I think we're just a part of this community that's really cool, that hopefully has an impact on people. And Widener is another chapter in that. I love doing gigs like that because it's very different. It's different than the heavily competitive side of what the other stuff that we do. And it reminds you why you do it, right? Why I do DCI, the recaps and things, that goes away a long time ago. Of course, we're competitive people, but that's not why we're still doing it. You're doing it for impact. And it's how I grew up. And you want to be connected to that history of where you came from. And I think Widener's kind of doing that on the level that they can, especially where there was nothing there. And maybe you could speak on this, Iain. What is the community outlook on it? People must be pretty excited about it.
Yeah, people obviously are excited to have the group on campus, and obviously it grew out of a pep band, and I think people are even more excited to have a marching band here. And I think it's interesting because there really were no expectations other than we're going to have a marching band. You're going to go out at halftime. You're going to do your thing. There were no real guidelines other than let's put a band on the field. But I think people have enjoyed it, and because we don't have music majors at Widener, we have all these, we've got a ton of engineers, nurses, College of Arts and Sciences, business, and so on. We have a lot of people just who are they were passionate about playing music in high school, and they can kind of continue to do it here at Widener. And I think it's a win for the university because it's something that draws students to our university. That's an extracurricular and outside of their academic major and so on. So yeah, I think the group has been well received, and people have been grateful for our ambassadorship and our service to the university. And that's kind of the way I think of it. We're ambassadors to the university. We talk about that with the band students all the time. When you're in uniform, or even when you're not in uniform, you're an ambassador, and you're here to put Widener's best face and feet out there for sure. So.
Well, it's remarkable what you guys have accomplished, and this has been such an insightful conversation about sort of how you're thinking about it and why it's working. And I appreciate you guys sharing that. Boy, I wish that every percussion arranger in the entire industry that worked with any school would listen to this conversation, Colin, because the part about your role and how you support the wind parts, like as a wind arranger, every year that I write, and I've been writing for a really long time, every year that I write, I appreciate more what the percussion arranger brings to the table and how they make it work. And like, there's nothing more painful than trying to write a wonderful arrangement of some sort of popular tune and then having the percussion parts just kill it because they don't realize either their role, as you mentioned, or the right feel. How do you creating that right feel that somehow reminds people of the original is just pure magic, in my opinion. I have no idea how you guys do it, but when you do, it's fantastic. And so it's part of how it's working at Widener for sure.
And I think it's definitely something. Well, I know this is true because this is how I learned. You learn through your mistakes, of course, and we all make a million mistakes a day. It's about how you recover and get to the right solution quickly. And with arranging, I was lucky because things were slower. There wasn't the amount of people writing. I mean, think about GarageBand, how that innovated the space of composing. I think it's so cool that like a young person can get a computer and it has GarageBand on it and they can start writing music. Those types of outlets weren't available when I was learning to write. There's advantages and disadvantages to that. The advantage is there's no MIDI. You have to hear things in your head. You have to really understand the instruments. That's what took the most time. And then when you start doing ensemble and you start to get back and look at what you wrote with the winds, that's when you learn. You go, well, that doesn't sound good. That's not working, because it might work up close to the drum line. And I think that's the way that everybody teaches and writes when they first start. I certainly did this for years. Right up close to it, sounds great. Sounds great with the front ensemble. Everything's working great. Now you get up in the tower and listen to the music where the actual audience is. Like, think about how crazy it is. And if you're competitive, you say, well, the judges, that's where most of the judges are. is back far away watching your group, whether it's DCI, pick a genre. So you have to evaluate your writing on many different levels. You can't just evaluate it. And I'm just saying this is what I try to go through the process of like, okay, let me evaluate it. Like we just had a camp at Boston, and I'm like, okay, that's crappy. That's not good what I wrote there. Because we got back, we ensembled it for the first time. You go, yeah, that's not going to work. So that process never goes away. And I think that having the critical ears, I think tuning is like that. Talking about, like, not to get super nerded out here, but I think tuning, like all these things really matter with the drum line and with the front ensemble, the amplification, all these things and how they create that synergy with the wind section. They're things that you have to get back enough, listen to it, and be okay with finding a different plan and pivoting from your original plan.
Well, right. And perhaps the most profound thing you just said, Colin, is that you have the knowledge and self or insight to realize when it's not right. Because we all know a lot of people that can write really great stuff, but somehow they don't realize when they've missed, and when they need to go back and reevaluate and switch. And that's their big bugaboo. So the idea that you have that critical ear and the ability to say, okay, I got that wrong, let me start again. I've heard Scott Chandler say that 1,000 times. He'll stand in front of his color guard, and then he'll be like, okay, that's the stupidest thing I ever wrote. Don't ever do that again. Let's try again. And he isn't upset about it. He just understands that's how the process works. I wish everybody could learn that, and I'm glad that you said it.
But I mean, that's teamwork, right? If you I choose to be a part of a huge team of people, like in a drum corps setting. When I choose to write for one of my high schools, I mean, there's customer service involved. I need to deliver something that everybody feels good about. So to recognize if it's not working, I mean, number one, it doesn't sound good. You can clearly, if you're tuned in, you should be able to see that and be okay with the fact that you wrote it and you can change it. See, I always give myself, like, be kind to yourself. Like, try to say it's actually just a step in getting it right. And I think that's a really important process. I know this is more about Widener, but I think even with Widener, we started, there's nobody in the band. I mean, it's a very small group. So we knew that, like, we had to try some things to get this thing off the ground, because first impression is everything. So you're getting these kids in, and they need to get excited. So I know that we talked a lot, Iain, about using like technology, using like a synthesizer, having some amplification, some rhythm section, so we can have a very small pit and still give you and deliver the things that you need to. But I think being flexible, and this is like anything we've talked about today, it's about being flexible, self-realizing that it's okay that it's not optimum the way you wrote it, just fix it. And you're asking, well, how do you know that? Well, I might be doing ensemble with someone like Gino Cipriani, who's the brass director at Boston, and he'll be like, it doesn't sound good. I mean, I can't hear the trumpets, or I can't, you know what I mean? I think you have to read the room. You can't just, and that's the danger of a MIDI, because the MIDI is just I think it's a wonderful tool. So it's like, I always say to the band directors I work with, it's just the first step of like giving you like the vision of what it is. But in a lot of the visual people, they rely on it, and it's a very great tool. But that's not what it's going to sound like when you restage it. Once it's staged in the drill, it's a whole nother ball game, and we go through another round of changes there. And I think that the ability to adjust is everything, right? And be okay with it. It's not a negative.
Right, and you created a team where where your colleagues feel comfortable and safe to really tell you what they think, and that culture is also super important. We have to start wrapping this up. Iain, it sounds like you have done a wonderful job of, like, of course, obviously getting really smart, talented people to help you do this. But then, you've all created this culture where you're working together and you're creating something really wonderful. What would you want to say as we're wrapping this up, Iain, about the team and the music part of it?
Well, again, I think it's about just collaboration, and I think I'll use our most recent writing example. We just redid our pregame a week or two ago, and I think Keith and I did like 4 or 5 edits, and we finally got to the one we wanted, and then Colin got involved, and he had a couple things he wanted adjusted and so on. But I think it's a team of people, and that's what I'm super grateful for at Widener. And obviously, it's great to work with friends and colleagues and people I'm close to, but the ability to kind of collaborate and have an open dialogue and adjust things year to year day to day, week to week, and be able to make changes and so on, and really sculpt an individual customized product that the students can put out on the field. So that's been a real joy for me. Obviously, working with people that I'm friends with and have done projects with before is great, but really being able to create something unique at Widener has been a lot of fun, and especially fun to do with friends and colleagues.
Yeah. Well, great job, guys. Colin and Keith, thank you so much for talking about your role with the music at Widener, and thanks for the great work you're doing there and otherwise. Really, really appreciate you being a part of this today.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
Great to see you.
Marching Arts Education is the home of the Marching Roundtable podcast. We give you access to the top marching arts professionals through live webinars, podcasts, videos, interviews, and online coursework. With over 1,000 podcasts and hundreds of webinars and videos, there are hours of great professional development for you and your staff. Sign up for a membership to Marching Arts Education to get complete access to all webinars, videos, and podcasts, plus discounts on coursework. Many directors are using professional development funds through their school or boosters to make these resources available to their staff. Imagine what you could do with so many great new ideas from the top professionals in our activity. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and sign up for our newsletter to find out about the latest podcasts, webinars, and new content. Find all of this and sign up at marchingartseducation.com.